So the first thing I want to say is I did not get that test graded for everybody yet. This class, your grades are in the grade book if you were interested. Some of you did really well. Some people, I think, struggled with the reading. We'll go through that all tomorrow. But I did want you to have your brand new chapter 6 packet out. And then I also asked you to grab your reference table. On your desk, though, you should see a little packet of paper, which you're welcome to open up. It is actually just a copy of 8 and 9 of your reference table. So it's nothing that you don't already have. I just wanted you to have like a white spare copy of this reference table. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Actually, let's start there. I'm not actually going to start with your packet. I'm going to start right here. And the reason I'm not starting at the beginning of the packet is I do want to make sure we get through this, because the lab we're starting, or some of you already started it today, goes with these 2 pages. And I want you to be as comfortable as possible as you can in lab. So we are going a tiny bit out of order. So we're going to start right away with this reference table. I guess I should start with chapter 6 is Earth's history. So that almost sounds like a social studies class, doesn't it? Earth history. And a lot of what we're going to do today and this week, you can kind of relate it to things you've learned in social studies, but not, they don't go hand in hand. But like, for example, this reference table is a timeline. Have you guys done timelines in social studies before? What have you made a timeline or looked at a timeline in social studies of before? I'm sure there's something you've done in the timeline. Okay, how about this? Let's do a war. I don't know my wars. I'm not in social studies right now, so I might get some things mixed up. But what might you do? What might the timeline for a war start with? The year it started. And here's where you're going to see that and which way do they typically go? So if I put a dot right here for war started, now what would I do in social studies? Yep, so a bunch of you do this. So there's going to be a line. And what would this timeline end with if it was a war? War ended. No. If we had a timeline for when the war started and war ended, what might be some bullets that we would put in there? What would be some important events during a war? Make something up. It doesn't have to be, obviously we're not doing. What happens during a war? Fighting, okay? So right here, there was the battle X, Y, and Z. How about, like I know in World War II, one important thing that happened was the US joined the war. So you might have a dot for country W joined war. I think you guys kind of get the idea. It's a timeline. You've looked at timelines like this before, right? Normally they would have dates, but since I'm making them up, I didn't have dates. Well, this reference table is nothing more than a timeline, but it's a weird timeline. So you're used to, have you ever seen one that doesn't go across the paper like this? I don't know if you have. Would it be weird if one went up and down instead and had the date here and you could still read it, right? That's what this one does. This one, we're going to break it down bit by bit. We're going to start with way over here. And I know you cannot read mine because it's too far away. So I want you to have your reference table that I just gave you, or your blue one, it doesn't matter which one, open in front of you. Because I know this one's too far away for you to see. But what I'm getting at is right here, it says millions of years ago. And it starts at 0, and as we go down, it goes to 4,600 million years ago. So it's nothing more than a timeline turned vertical instead of horizontal. Now, when is 0 million years ago? Right now. Let's add that since not all of you joined in this conversation. 0 million years. So I know, again, you can't see mine, but find 0 million years on your paper. And I want you to write today, right there. So you can either use the white one that I gave you or your own purple or blue one. We are going to color the white one, so that's why I wanted to have the white one out. But you could label both if you wanted. So again, label 0 million years ago, that says today. Now let's talk about the bottom of this, which is 4,600 million years ago. Do we normally say numbers 4,600 million? Yeah. You do? I don't normally. I normally go, like the biggest million I would ever get to is 999 million. And then I would start over at a billion. They're kind of messing with you. What does 4,600 million mean? Actually, let's go back up here. If I had 500 million, what would that mean? How would I write that out? 500, you don't have to do this yet. 500 million. How do I write if I was to write this all out? I mean, with zeros. How many zeros? 6 zeros. So 500, that's 500 million. So when it says 500 million years ago, this is what it means. So what do you think it means when they have 4,600 million? How do I write that out? So we'll start with the 4,600, and then what should I do? Add 6 zeros. Add a million's worth of zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, comma, 1, 2, 3, comma. 4,600,000,000. I would like you guys to write that. So I would like you to write it out. So right under here, so if you're not sure what I'm talking about that number right there. Is 4,600,000,000. So you can see why they shortened it up, because they didn't want to write the 6 zeros. Does anybody know another way I can write 4,600,000,000 and it still mean the same thing? How else can I write 4,600,000,000? 4.6. Now, can I just leave it 4.6? No, you're going to have a label, because if I write 4.6, that to me means 4.6 years. So make sure you add a label. Now you could write out billion, or another way that you can abbreviate it is BYA, billions of years ago. Or if you liked the 4,600, again, if you want to write it that way, as long as you give it a label, here's a label you can use, MYA, millions of years ago. Or of course you could write it out. Could you add these 3 labels right here to your reference table? So this reference table is just a timeline that starts at 0 million years ago and goes down to 4,600,000,000 years. So we're not talking about just a couple of years here, or even 100 years. We're talking about 4,600,000,000 years worth of information. And if you just started to glance through this, which I didn't expect you to read through it at all, there's a lot of stuff on this reference table. The fact that the Regents decided to use 2 out of your 16 pages for this timeline, what do you think that means? No, it is important to them. They thought it was so important that they took up 2 out of 16 pages for just this chapter. So to relate that to the Regents test, the exam at the end of the year, what do you think that means about this chapter? They voted. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of questions on this. And it's either good news or bad news. I think it's great news, because that means there's a lot of answers on these 2 pages. Some people see this as bad news because there's a lot of questions on these 2 pages. I like it because you can look up the answers. Some people don't like looking up answers and just want to know the answers off the top of your head. But I think it's a good thing. So what we got to do is break this down a little bit more. There's a lot going on here. We're going to start at the top. So first of all, this is history of New York State. They're not going to talk about Hawaii on this. There's nothing about China on these pages. This is not even Florida. This is all the stuff that's happening in New York. That doesn't mean it's not happening other places too, but it is specifically the things that happened to New York over the past 4.6 billion years. So that's the very, very top. Then we're going to look at this top line here. Eon, era, period, and epoch. These are units of time. They're units of time for big amounts of time. Let's relate these to things you're used to talking about. What are some units of time that you're familiar with that you might have learned about in social or just in life in general? What are some units of time you've used? Okay, start with minutes, seconds, hours, days. Yeah, that's one good, that is really good. We have an hour. No, let's start with a day. We have a day, and a day gets broken up into hours first, and then hours get broken up into minutes, and minutes get broken up into seconds. So that's one set of units of time that you're pretty comfortable using, right? Like that wasn't news to anybody. Days, hours, minutes, seconds. In social studies, when they're talking about bigger time periods, they might use centuries. Anybody know what a century is? That's 100 years. What does centuries get broken up into? Decades, 10 years. What do decades get broken up into? Years. And then years get broken up into months, and months get broken up into days. Days, then we just did hours, minutes, and seconds. So you guys got that concept, right? Well, this is the same concept, just much, much bigger time. So we have an eon. Eons get broken up into eras. Eras get broken up into periods. Periods get broken up into epochs. And epochs get broken up, if you can see here, it says millions of years. So it works the same way as hours, minutes, and seconds. It's just with new words you've never heard before. But it's really nice and convenient the way they have them listed here because they go in order. Eons to eras, eras into periods, periods get broken up into epochs. So it's the same idea. So just like a day is the biggest unit of time that we talked about the first one, an eon is the biggest unit of time here. They kind of organized it nicely. We've got the eons, and then they listed the eon right here. Now, I know these words are going to be hard to pronounce and even harder to spell. So first of all, I might butcher the pronunciation of them. And with spelling, I want to warn you, I don't care about spelling, except there's a lot of words that are really close to each other here. So like this word right here is Phanerozoic. This word right here is Proterozoic. This one's Paleozoic. Those are three words that all end in zoic that begin with a P. So don't care if you spell them exactly perfect, but make sure you're not spelling a wrong word or even close to the other word. So do you have to memorize it? No, it's every spelling's right here. So just check your reference table before you write something ever. All right, so what we're going to do is I want to kind of color code this reference table a little bit. So I gave everybody the same color. Well, some of the colors are slightly different, but everybody has a pink, a green, a blue, a red, and an orange. So we're going to start with an eon because do I want to start with an eon? I don't think I do want to start with an eon. Let me check.
We have a highlighter.
Because that's for something even different. All right. So we are going to look at the eon first. There are only 2 eons in all of geological history. So those 4.6 billion years can be broken up into 2 eons. Here's the first one, or the one that we're currently in. By the way, how do I know that this is the one we're currently in? Right here. Yeah. Okay. Because it's near the 0 million years ago. Perfect. That's today. We are in this eon. This eon, if we check the millions of years ago, you can see that it started down here between the 5 and the 600 mark. So we're talking about 550-ish million years ago is when it started. And it's broken up into 3 eras. That's where I want to start. Grab your pink, please. So everybody grab a pink colored pencil. We're going to color the current era. So we're going to see how it's this little section right here. It's just a teeny tiny little square right there. Just that square. But see how it kind of opens up? That's what we're going to color. We're going to color this whole Cenozoic era. And we're going to go all the way across both sheets of paper. While you're coloring, kind of glance at the words you're coloring over. Just, you don't have to read them all word for word, but see what's in there. So again, we're going all the way across. I know coloring is super fun, but I do not want this coloring to take like 8 hours. Even with this globe at the end, I do want you to kind of color over it completely straight across. Make sure you're not coloring so dark that you can't see underneath it. There you go. You have a quick, so you guys should be close to being done coloring too, since I am. This is the this is the era we currently live in. You can see that this era is broken up into 3 periods. We have the Paleogene, the Neogene, and the Quaternary. Each one of those has a fancy name for their epoch. And then life on Earth. Read through the life on Earth for this stuff. The life on Earth column, as you can tell by its name, has to do with things that are living, like really important like events that happen in this era. So in this era, you can see this is when humans showed up. Humans have shown up right there out of this whole timeline. That's when we showed up. We have in here at the very start of it was the mass extinction of dinosaurs. So you can see, like, we are talking about really, really important things. Now, they didn't talk about, like, when Pomeranians showed up. So we're not going into minute details, but we are talking about big, important big life changes that happened on Earth. So that's the life on Earth column. You'll see that all the way through. This one right here, we're going to skip this middle column for right now, and we'll look over here at the important geological events. This is where you're going to find earth science-y things. So things we've talked about this year. The only one in here is, what does it say? Advance and retreat of last continental ice. So that's glaciers. So that's something we talked about. And then we've got a map of what the world looked like at specific periods in time. So here's not 59 million years ago. You can see the continents are pretty much where they are today. They're a little bit closer, but they're not all jammed together in that example. We're going to do the same thing for the next eon. No, the next era. Why do I keep saying this wrong? So after the pink, we're going to go to green. So everybody grab their green. We're going to do the Mesozoic. So again, it's this little box here, but then it expands. And we're going to talk about that expanding part in 1 second. Well, more than a second. But go ahead and color the Mesozoic green. Again, go across both sheets of paper. Doesn't have to be completely beautiful. Now this time, we're gonna color both globes at the end, so you are gonna have to kind of go down. But that globe, as you can see with its arrow, is supposed to be in this box here. So again, I know how coloring is probably better than learning, but I do need you to color faster than you probably want to. So if you've looked at those globes, you can see the bottom one in our green section, that was 213 million years ago. You can see Pangea's all jammed up together there. All the continents are pretty squished together in Pangea, but by the time you get up to 119 million years ago, they're starting to separate a little bit. We're gonna keep going. So the next color is going to be orange. This is, again, just this little section there, and then it expands to a much bigger chunk of the rest of the page. Again, this time we're going to include both of those globes at the end. No, you really cannot see my coloring on this. So you guys all a chance to catch up on the coloring. All right. So is everybody just about done with that set of coloring? So you have 3 colors. So Zach, at the end here, I'll just give you my colored one. So you can just pay attention. You will need a new packet. Oh, I hate rushing you guys coloring, but speed it up. Bearing is important. if you had to give a percentage of how much of the paper we just colored, what percent would you estimate this to be?
3/4.
3/4? I might even go a little higher than that, maybe like 80%. Maybe even 90, it's hard to say. More than half though, right? Way more than half. I wanna point something out, so we colored almost the entire pages 8 and 9, except for over here. Check out, we only colored, if we only were looking at like that part, so from here over, we've only colored this little section that goes to 500 something. There's still 4,100 million years that we didn't color, but we colored most of the page. So what the Regents has done is they took the Phanerozoic eon, this little section here, and they blew it up. They blew up the Phanerozoic eon because if you can tell, that's when most of the stuff happened. See all the things we colored over versus how few things are left to color over? Most of the really important stuff that's happened on Earth has happened recently during the Phanerozoic eon. So this whole colored section that we colored really should be right there. They would have to cram it in this little section. So what I'm trying to show you is there's kind of two separate things going on, and they are all separated by this black line. See the black line I'm referring to? This is actually why I had you get your, or why I gave you a highlighter, but now that we colored, I'm not sure it's going to work. Can you color that black line with your highlighter? Just, I guess I should say, can you highlight that black line? I call that black line the black line of confusedness. That's not an official, if you got a dead one, can we throw them out? It's not an official term, black line of confusedness, but I think it's the best description of this line ever. And I say it's the black line of confusedness because it's where things start getting confusing. If you can tell, it's the cutoff between the two eons, the Phanerozoic eon and the Precambrian eon. So that black line is the cutoff between the two eons in all of Earth's history. If you are above the black line of confusedness, like all the stuff we just colored, okay, I need you guys to pay attention because this is a teaching moment, not just a coloring moment. So all the things we just colored are above that black line. I want you to realize that, in fact, let's find one. Find earliest dinosaurs, everybody. So again, I know you can't read mine, but earliest dinosaurs is near the bottom of the green section. So, yeah, everybody take this reference table now that should be colored, put it in front of you nice and straight so that you're not guessing. Here's the earliest dinosaurs. It's in the very bottom of the green section. If I asked you how many millions of years ago this was, what would you have done to find this? How many millions of years ago? Where would you go to find? Sorry, got really shocked.
Follow it up to the.
Not follow it up, but over. You would follow it over to here, right? That's what you think you should do?
No.
But it's not. That's where the black line of confusedness comes in. So in the black line of confusedness, there is the millions of years ago listed here as well. I want you to highlight that. And I'm not sure if we can highlight over colored pencils, but we're about to find out. So millions of years. So I highlighted the millions of years ago there. I would like you to highlight these numbers. If you are above the black line of confusedness, you have to read the millions of years ago in the middle here. Because remember, all of the colored section is supposed to be squished up here. So these numbers on the left are not where we read for anything that we colored so far. So for that, here is the earliest dinosaurs. In this section that we just highlighted, here's 251, and here's 200 million years ago. Were the earliest dinosaurs on either one of those lines? No, we're in the middle of those two. So you do have to estimate. So what do you think if we're using these middle numbers, which are the right numbers, how many millions of years ago do you want to estimate the dinosaurs? If that's 200 and there's 251. 225, do you think we're in the Dead Smack Center? I think we're a little closer to 251 personally. So I'm going to go with 230 million years ago. You could write that. That won't hurt. Yep. So you do have to estimate sometimes. Now let's find extinction of dinosaurs. By the way, does extinction come before or after earliest dinosaurs? After. If we have the earliest ones, they go extinct sometime after that. Now, is after closer to the top or the bottom? Top. Remember, this is today up here. So look through, see until you find extinction of dinosaurs. Found it? Right here? It says mass extinction of dinosaurs. Do you see how that has a bracket, that V shape? That's indicating it's directly on that line. So for anytime it has that V bracket, that's pointing right to the year that happened. So 65.5 million years ago for the extinction of dinosaurs. So anything in that colored area that we just read, you have to read the millions of years ago here in the middle. I was going to color more, but I like having just that one section colored. One more kind of weird thing, and this has to do with that black line of confusedness. For everything that was colored, it goes perfectly lined up. Here's the eons, here's the eras, here's the periods, here's the epochs. But anything that's underneath it, they kind of jammed it in, and they still go in order. So below it, here's the Precambrian eon, the Archean eras, and then these are the periods. Let's actually label that. So here I'm going to label this one eon with the Precambrian. This one I'm going to go era. And then period. So they still go in order. They still go in order. They just don't line up with the words perfectly. So eon, era, period. Eon, era, and then period right there. Now, a couple other things. You may have noticed all these creatures on the bottom. And each one of these creatures has a letter. For example, these first three, A, B, and C, they're right here, A, B, and C. The thing with these little creatures, these are officially called index fossils, which we'll talk about later this week. But these little creatures, the important thing is they were only around for that small circle. So this creature A, which is, I think, pronounced Elliptocephalia, I don't know. Again, I'm going to butcher all these names. That was only around during this little circle A. But another thing I want to point out, notice how A, B, and C are all on the line labeled trilobites. So these three guys are all trilobites. Now this trilobite line ends right here. Why do you think the line ends and doesn't go all the way up to the top? Why wouldn't they go up to the top? That's when they went extinct. We'd have nothing called trilobites around these days. If they did, like what we do have mammals, see how mammals line goes all the way to the top? We do still have corals, so see how coral goes to the top? The line only represents when that particular type of animal was around. So you can see that A, B, and C are all trilobites, which means they're all related. Do you notice with A, B, and C, can you just look at their pictures and see that, well, they are kind of like cousins maybe? They at least have some similar characteristics. They're not identical, but they kind of look like each other, kind of like wolves, dogs, foxes. They kind of look alike, but they're not exactly the same. That's what's happening here. These three are all related, but not directly. Let's see if you can use the basics of this reference table. Grab your packet that you just picked up and turn to page 2. There's, what is there, 10 questions there? We're not, 13, we're not gonna get to them all. Let's start right here. What's the estimated time? Actually, you know what? Let's start your homework. It's gonna be here on page 3. Before we get too far, we are gonna cross off some on page 3. So is everybody on page 3?
Yeah.
Okay, let's cross off all of I and J. So the bottom 2 there. I and J can both disappear, and so can C in the next one. Everything else we should be able to do. So this first one, I already did coral, so let's find earliest insects. Which column should we look in to find earliest insects? The life on Earth. So living things on the life on Earth, earth sciencey things, and the geological events. Search through, it's gonna take you a minute until you find earliest insects. What color, are you in the colored one yet? Oh, I got it right here in the orange. Right here. So it's a little bit lower than halfway through the orange. Did everybody find earliest insects? Now your homework asks for name the epoch in the period for earliest insects. So we go over to the epoch column. It's clearly in the late section. And what period? Earliest insects?
Valerian.
Silurian.
Oh,
Late
yeah.
Silurian. So all you gotta do is fill that in. Late Silurian. How about diverse bony fish? See if you can find that one. And it literally says diverse bony fish. What color, Sarah?
Green, first box of the green.
First box of the green, she says.
Early brick.
So right here. Yeah, so we're still struggling with how to pronounce these, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing them right, but there's diverse bony fish. The hardest part about this is going to be finding each word. I'll tell you, each one is in there word for word. So again, if we go for the epoch, it's early, and go on over to the period, I believe that's pronounced Cretaceous. Again, the spelling, if you miss a word, a vowel or a letter here and there, that's not a huge deal, as long as you don't spell anything that's really similar to a different word. So like I said, I think the hardest part is going to be finding each thing, but make sure you find that word. There are 21 questions here that you have to fill in. I'm good as long as you fill in 15 of them. So I'm telling you, you can skip 6 things if you can't find them. So your homework is to do 15 of these pages. And by 15, that's 1, that's 2.
On the second one, what one do we not have to do?
Letter C.
That's one of the.
So each line is 1. I'm only saying this because I don't want you to sit there and you're like, I can't find where it says earliest trilobites, and I don't want you to sit there and look for that for 5 minutes. So what I'm telling you is you can skip 5 or what is it, 6 of these questions. But hint, I'm gonna make you do them tomorrow morning
From what?
during class. It will say on the board, finish the rest of page 3 as soon as you walk in tomorrow.
I don't see the earliest reptiles.
Okay, earliest reptiles, I believe, is hiding. It's somewhere in the orange.
Abundant reptiles.
Yep, so we're gonna look, if you find abundant, would you look before or after abundant for earliest?
Oh,
Yep. Is it, did anybody find it yet?
Yeah,
What color?
it's orange,
It is orange?
the box,
oh, it's not.
It is.
it's where the large and the steel tree.
Ah, right there. I knew it was hiding. Earliest reptile, so it's about halfway through the orange. They are all in there word for word, and when they say earliest, don't tell me abundant. It's about halfway through. It's attached, it's somewhere in this Mississippian. So again, guys, do page 3. I'm letting you off the hook if you can't find all of them, but try them all.